Yesterday we saw the latest build of the PTR, and this came with a plethora of class changes. And in this video I do want to spend some time talking about the tank changes specifically and how they felt so far, or I guess my opinions on them, because I haven't been able to test every single tank yet. I did end up streaming a little bit last night and a little bit this morning, but I just wanted to take some time to go through my thoughts as well as my experience testing them, because a lot of you guys keep asking me the same questions. So I'm hoping to kind of get it all in one place. Starting off with the Brewmaster Monk, there was changes last week that we saw to Celestial Brew. Overall, I think they're pretty good. If you are unaware what those changes were, basically they reduced the cap of Purified Chi from 10 down to 6, and they increased the potency of each stack. So this was roughly a 5% buff to Celestial Brew, and this is going to actually have some impact on mastery gains as well as some talents. I'll talk about those in a future video, especially when I do the 11.1 Brewmaster guide, but basically all around good buffs. They affect the middle or like lower end of the bracket more than it does affect the high end, but still all around a good change. The other change that we saw yesterday though actually is this one here. We are seeing a Invoke Niuzao now absorbs 40% of staggered damage, was 25%, and Invoke Niuzao Stomp increased by 22%. Now, most people saw this, and it seems like everyone's like, Dave is back. Dave is the name of the cow for some reason. I just call him Cow Buff, but basically our Black Ox is now a little bit more of a defensive cooldown, but there's a couple of issues that I have with this. First, there is a bug where this isn't interacting with Call to Arms, our capstone talent that branches off of Weapons of Order. Therefore, it's only if you take the actual Niuzao talent. Now, the problem with increasing the amount of damage that he'll take from the Brewmaster is that, for those who don't know, Niuzao he's a pet. When you summon him, he has a set amount of health. Meaning that as you approach higher and higher content, and as you take more and more damage as a Brewmaster, Niuzao is going to take more and more damage. Therefore, the buff almost acts as a 12 million pseudo DR or absorb, like whatever your health pool is. So if your health pool is 10 million, you have a Niuzao Black Ox for 10 million. And if he takes 10 million damage, he dies, and the buff goes away. In higher level of content, he will die before the buff actually goes away, therefore making this not as impactful as I think a lot of players think it may be. There's also a ton of other issues with Niuzao in particular, mostly regarding the talents down the middle of the tree, including Walk with the Ox, as well as improved Niuzao. Now, unfortunately, it's very difficult to spend 4 points here, or at least justifying spending the points here, because you're going to lose out on a lot of other things, whether that's things like Ox Stance or Chi Surge or Facepalm. You're going to be sacrificing a lot of pretty powerful talents for a very, very small damage increase. Now, from what I could tell, it was give or take 0.5% more damage on Niuzao. Stomp is being a little bit more competitive, especially if you're playing all the way down into improved Invoke Niuzao the Black Ox, but even then, it's not anything to write home about. If anything, this is a little bit better for single target raid, because at least he won't die, but it's not enough. There's a couple of fixes that I think Blizzard could make to make this a little bit stronger. First off, maybe make it so Niuzao doesn't have a health pool and that he's more of a buff or just a kind of an effigy. I think making Niuzao baseline, and this would call for more of a talent rework, but you need to, I think Niuzao should be just baseline for the Brewmaster, and I think Walk with the Ox should be reduced to a 1-point node instead of a 2-point node. Those could make smaller improvements as well. You could also just make the talents even stronger and put them down in the capstone after Ox Stance, maybe instead of Black Ox Adept. Anyways, the buffs that we saw this week in particular were really bad, though again, the Purified Chi changes with Celestial Brew, those were great. I'm a big fan of those. Hopefully they do fix Call to Arms to be interactive with these changes. As of right now, the Call to Arms is still the old version of Niuzao, where his Stomp is still fairly weak, and he still lasts for 12 seconds, but he only is granting 25% absorption compared to 40%. So if they buff this, Call to Arms might actually be a very competitive talent, but until then, this is not something to be excited for. Anyways, moving on, we also saw some changes to Protection Warrior. Now, Protection Warrior, a couple of the changes in these notes included some changes that they saw last week. For example, the Luck of the Draw buff being extended, as well as the increase on shield charge cooldown reduction. That was also implemented last week, as well as the Shield Slam's critical strike chance. So these were all implemented last week. Warrior felt very good through things like Theater of Pain, Workshop, and Motherload. I've been able to test all three. Now, they actually made some very nice changes to some of our core talents, including Barbaric Training. No longer increases the cost of Revenge, so it's a little bit easier to actually pick up. You also have Frothing Berserker now has a chance to refund more Rage on Revenge than it usually did, so it was bumped up by 100%, so from 25 to 50% of a refund on that. And I guess there was a bug with Blood Surge that wasn't actually giving you the intended amount of Rage back, so Blood Surge could be played, though I doubt it. Overall, I'm actually kind of happy with the State of Warrior. I think there's a few more changes they can make because there are windows in single target where the class does feel just a little too slow. And again, I think this is mostly coming down to Strategist and Devastator. If they buff those things back to what they were, or maybe find a middle ground, maybe a 25% chance on reset instead of a 30 or a 20, then maybe it'll actually feel pretty good. I can't speak on any of the other Warrior changes because I just don't play Fury and Arms in their current iteration, but Protection is actually not looking too bad for this next season, though time will tell. Last but not least, we did see a few Demon Hunter changes. There was a buff to Immolation Aura. This was increased by 6% damage, and Sigil of Flame increased by 6%. These are fine, nothing to really write home about. Fellscarred in particular had a massive Demon Surge damage increase, which should make it a little bit more competitive in single target with Eldraki. And then Burning Blades now deals 50% of a listed ability damage over 6 seconds. It was 35%, so this was a pretty massive damage buff. And Flamebound now increases Immolation Aura critical damage by 30%. It was 25%. So again, we're seeing an 18% buff there, and a pretty sizable 30% give or take buff to Burning Blade. So overall, pretty good. Vengeance saw a baseline nerf though to Burning Blood, as well as Fiery Demise, making Fiery Brand increase the fire damage that the target takes by 15 and 30 respectively, when it used to be 20 to 40. This is kind of nice, only because it puts less emphasis into triple or double dipping on your fire damage intake between Demon Surge as well as Fiery Brand. So the idea to push out as much damage as possible is get Fiery Brand on all your targets, pop meta, and start slamming your buttons, because then targets would be taking 40% more fire damage from Demon Surge. Changing this kind of pulls back from that a little bit, allowing for Demon Hunters not to feel as pressured into putting all of their eggs in one basket, meaning Fiery Brand plus meta one pull, and then having nothing for the next. So you're probably going to be playing Demon Surge. Now, Eldraki Reaver is performing significantly well. I've just had some issues testing on it to a lot of one-shots, but that's just probably because I'm bad. Now, the rest of the tanks, including Blood Death Knight, Guardian Druid, and Prop Paladin, didn't really see any notes this week. I'm going to be doing a full update video probably tomorrow or the day after, talking about all the changes we've seen so far on the tanks and how they feel to play in a lot of these dungeons. With the notes that came out yesterday, I wanted to get this video out. So let me know what you guys think down below about any of the changes that were listed here, or I guess not mentioned. Obviously, a big shout out to all my Patreon supporters, because without them, I couldn't make content like this. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.